And follow along for the first part of the presentation.
We're going to try to make this the camera again.
All right, board members, I'll call the meeting to order. This is Nottoway County Board of Supervisors Budget Work Session for June 8th, 2023. And
that shouldn't be budget.
I'm sorry.
That should be fiscal journal work session, 2 topics.
I know better than to say what I read. That's all right. Thank you all for being here. We got a couple of presentations we're going to do tonight. I've got some staff members with us here. Ms. Andrea Kelly, Buddy Hyde, and of course, Mr. Costin, and Commonwealth attorneys joining us tonight. Thank you. Got some hard work ahead of us, but Supervisor, Mr. Bond, do you mind giving us the invocation, please?
Let's bow our heads, please. Gracious God, our Father, we pause to give you the honor, the glory, and the praise. And we thank you for all that you do for us. We pray that what we say and do tonight will be pleasing to thee in thy sight. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Bond. To be on my right, I'll rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank y'all. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, or do we have any amendments?
We have no amendments proposed from staff.
Okay.
Move to approve the agenda as presented. Second.
All right, got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion, the motion's passed, the agenda is approved. We're gonna go ahead and jump into this. We're gonna start our presentations tonight with the Family Mentoring Program. Mr. Benjamin Nottoway with the Build and Hope Community Center Incorporated. If you don't mind, please join us, sir. And the floor is yours.
Oh, you want me to sit?
Sit, stand, whatever you feel comfortable with, sir.
Well, I feel all right sitting.
Okay.
It's,
Yes, Larry, please. I didn't catch your last name. I would have called you Mr. Larry. Is that all right?
yeah, that's good. Well, the catch-22 to that is that we're brothers.
All right.
We both claim that. Well, I claim him. I don't know whether he claimed me or not. Oh, yeah. Okay. But we're here tonight. First of all, I'd like to thank you for allowing us to come here tonight to present our family mentoring program. We are very new in the neighborhood. We are right across the street. We renovated 146 West Courthouse Road, that building, and it was a church building, historical church building, and now we turned it into a community center, community resource center. And as you look at our docket for tonight, our mission statement is Building Hope Fellowship Mentoring Program is committed to facilitate encouragement and empowerment to children and teens to soar at home and school and community. The goal, our mentoring program can address 3 important issues we believe face some of the students of Nottoway County. These issues are truancy, poor academic performance, and a lack of social skills. Our mentoring program is designed with the flexibility to address these issues with our whole family focused approach. Our plan is to improve academic performance with a focus on SOLs. However, we recognize that concentrating on academic alone will not ensure educational success. The student must feel that they are part of the community that cares about them and help them imagine a brighter future. So along with the academic goals, this program will seek to add activities in social skill building, recreation, and performing arts. We will constantly be on the lookout to identify the child's interests and provide guidance. Our approach to this mentoring process is to provide the student mentees with both group and individual mentoring on a weekly basis. Also, contact with the student's caregiver will will be engaged on a regular basis as well. During the group mentoring sessions, some of the activities the students will have available to them are homework assistance, SOL awareness, performing arts, and social skill building. The individual sessions would be designed to encourage and empower the students' mentees. Contact with the caregivers is to offer assistance as needed. Also, we will encourage caregivers to support the child performing art activities when appropriate. Finally, the mentoring will visit the school mentees at the school when authorized by the school officials is appropriate. Program structure. The mentoring program operation model structure such as the students, mentees will be divided into two groups. The children ages 5 to 12 and children aged 13 to 18. The children in age 5 to 12 will meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 6, and the second group will meet on Monday and Wednesday from 4 to 6. Both groups will meet on Sunday from 2 to 4. Mentor selections. The mentors are retired professionals and graduate students. The retired professionals are educators, social workers, and clinical workers. The graduate students have a BA and a BS degree in education, social work, and counseling, and are motivated to gain experience and knowledge in these areas. All mentors are required to undergo background check before having direct contact with children and teens. The focus topics. The mentors will focus on topics in group and individual sessions such as conflict resolution, anger management, education on the effects of illegal drugs, self-empowerment, and the importance of education. These topics will assist mentees in building self-esteem and empowerment. Our support. Building Hope Fellowship Community Center will provide nutritious meals during the group session. Each mentees and families will have access to food pantries and closed closets.
Mr. Petway, if I can ask you to hold it right there for a second before you get into the fundraising parts of an operational cost. Does any of the board members have any questions for Mr. Petway at this point? All right, continue on, sir. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Program operational costs and fundraising targets. The goal is to start with 30 children. Oh, just my brother's going to do that for.
Well, that was a good part for the break there, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a good part.
Yeah, so this part here talks about how we plan on scaling the program. Initially, we thought about starting with 6 families, but if we scale it up, so we need to be able to organize it a little bit better. So our approach is to start with 30 children, and since we divide the children up into 2 groups, so that we plan on having children from both groups. And then the second part is, so how we plan on knowing how to that we are on schedule in terms of being able to continue the operation. So we broke it down. Our baseline approach is to have, we are looking to have fundraising to generate $5 per kid per hour. So that's what our baseline would be. And then in that $5, we plan on breaking it down. 80% of it would go to the mentors, and to 10% would cover administration costs. And then another 10% would be like for events that we would plan on having with the children. You know, if, like for instance, college going kids would need somebody to come in and talk about, you know, preparation for college, something like that. We have speakers coming in. So that's how the breakdown of the of that $5. And then so we plan on having 5 hours of contact with the kid per week. And with our baseline amount, that will correspond to $750 per week. And we are looking to engage the kids for 48 weeks. So our baseline. So for 30 kids, that would correspond to $36,000 per year. We also thinking about trying to, if we had raised that number from 30 to 45, we're thinking about doing it in a sort of organized way. We'll add 15 kids, but we would do it in a way that you know, just won't overwhelm us as we find mentors. And so with the additional of the 15 kids, if we get a total of 45 kids in a year, it would take us a half year to do that. And that would be another $9,000 per half year. So it would be a total of our $45,000. So that would be our base problem. We do have some challenges that we recognize. Right now we have 2 vans. So transportation might be a challenge. So we have to do multiple trips to pick up the kids, to bring between the center and home. And one way we can mitigate that is we can have a fundraising or something to bring that $5 to $7.50 per child per hour. And that would increase our total program cost to $67,500. So that's, you know, our way of measuring, you know, how to keep our program functioning and healthy. Okay.
In closing, I would like to add that I reached out to Mrs. Reed and Dr. Grimes and the probation officer, Mr. Michael Jones. And we had a very interesting conversation, and they seem to be excited about what we are bringing to the table. Also, we have already started, we had a meet and greet on 2 weeks ago, and it was a success. We was with the children and parents in the crew area. So we had a great attendance, and they responded well. We're planning on having going into the Blackstone and Burfield area as well. All right. I have 33 years of pastoral experience and also 28 years of public educators. I taught kids that had behavior and issues that caused them to have challenges in their educational progress. I also work with mental health skill building and intensive in-home and the crisis program. So my brother, he had,
as you can see, retired from NASA this December. So, but I've worked in communities in Newport News, Hampton. That's where I'm from. And in the early 2000s, I did run a family mentoring program down there.
we're a nonprofit organization and we are 501c3 compliant, and we are offering other financial means to support our thing, but this giving us this opportunity to come here to let you know that we want to be in partnership with the community as community growth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over our
It's very interesting, Mr. Petway, Ms. Petway. Do y'all have any other sites that are currently open now outside of this one?
No, this is the first one that we didn't start it with,
Okay,
but we have aspirations to go into the other communities.
okay,
But we're setting up a team here that's going to I'm gonna be hands-on in the process,
okay.
to make sure that everything is going well.
And just to follow up something that you mentioned, are you guys planning on to request any funds from the towns when you meet with them? Are you going to plan on going individually to the towns seeking funds as well, or just the county?
We're open to that.
Okay,
We're open to any means that we're going into corporate America. We're going into have individual donations, and we're going to raise funds to meet this budget.
Okay.
So we can move and go forward.
okay,
And as we get more kids, our fundraising effort will increase,
all right,
because we have to match the kids with. We want
right,
one of the things that we heard repeatedly is the truancy issue, and that's one of the things that we want to address.
okay. All right. Well, I didn't have any other questions. Board members, do y'all have any questions?
No.
All right, well, gentlemen, thank you all. And what we'll do is, we'll let, the board members have a chance to absorb a little bit of this, and then, maybe get our thoughts back to Mr. Costin and have him, give you all a brief on where we're at with that in the very near future then.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ma'am.
Yeah, you guys, y'all are welcome to stay. We're gonna be talking a lot about some garbage, but y'all are welcome to stay.
Wow.
And I don't mean political garbage.
Well, let me tell you this. This is my wife's birthday.
Have a nice night.
You better get home. Tell her happy birthday.
I'll do that too.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, board members, as we conclude that, we're gonna go ahead and turn it over to Ernie Hoke. Yes, you did say Coke. I was trying to think if you said that word again. He's gonna present a solid waste study phase 1 report here, something that's kind of been the settled on for Nottoway, and thank God for the crew that we've got out there now, headed up by Mr. Gary Easter here. If it wasn't for them, we'd be cut in half right now. So, Ernie Hoke,
Okay,
what was yours, sir?
thank you. Board members, audience, a little background. So I am with TRC Company. TRC was recently joined Draper Aiden. So we've been handling your engineering and your monitoring for this landfill for probably 30 years or more. And in this package, really what I did, and there's a lot of words to it, so certainly it's something that you can digest over coffee at some point in the future. I don't expect to really go through every word, but what I'd like to do tonight is just to give you a really good overview of where you've been, where you are, and really what we're talking about tonight is where you're going. And so in order to know where you're going, you really have to know where you are.
Right.
Otherwise, it just doesn't work. So with all that said, I'm going to go through this kind of page by page, but not word for word. And please stop me along the way if there are things you want me to elaborate on or talk about. At the end, really what our goal was. So what our goal was is to understand where you are and to take a look at the efficiencies and the economics and the future of what happens with your solid waste. So, I know everybody's has somewhat preconceived notions of what this is. And what I would like to do tonight is to dispel some of those myths and kind of show you what it costs and then talk about a couple of options for the future. Okay. All right. So let's start off with just some basic history. So the landfill, and you had a closed landfill, unlined, and you had a C&D construction landfill that was unlined. That's also now been closed. The EPA came out with new regulations that all new landfills had to be lined. They had to have a liner in them so nothing could leak into the groundwater. The old landfills didn't have that. The new ones do. So in 1994, DEQ approved, there's a pointer here, doesn't show on the screen. In 1994, the DEQ approved a permit for the new landfill, which is the lined landfill. It's referred to as Subtitle D landfills. All landfills now that are built have to be built to these standards everywhere in the country. So through the years, there's been some permit modifications that were done, but they really weren't. Some of those were some technical things that were done for the landfill. The solid waste management plan is required every 5 years. The last plan was submitted in 2018, and the new one's due now in 23. So next year, we'll work on another solid waste plan. What the solid waste plan does is every county has to have it, or region, to really identify that you have enough resources and room for your solid waste and your recycling. So landfills are divided into cells, and I have a lot of drawings here. Some are larger and some are in your book, and some here. Landfills are built in cells like a loaf of bread almost. And so they're built in pieces. So the landfill that was designed was for 6 cells. So far, we've built 5 of them. You're putting trash right now in the 5th cell, but there's some overlap that happens. And you closed the old landfill in 1996. You closed the CD&D landfill, construction demolition landfill, in 2001. So then what we did was our task was really to collect data, to understand the numbers, and to understand really, again, planning long term. So there's a lot of good news in this presentation. There's a lot of good news because a lot of communities are faced with crisis with their trash. You're not at a crisis point yet. I say yet because ultimately the landfill will fill up. So it's important to plan now, not wait till it's close to a crisis. So your current landfill, we'll go through this a couple of times. You see here 12 years of capacity you have. The 12 years of capacity is correct, but that's building a new cell. It's building the last cell that you have, this cell 6. The current cell, you got about 4 years maybe. So 4 years is still a pretty good window of time to make a decision or to adjust your paths. Okay, but 4 years will go fast, and permitting is timely, very time consuming, and quite frankly, can be very expensive. So what we did is, in order to, part of our presentation to you to do this was that we, again, needed to understand where you are. So these are some of the people that we met with and spoke to and have helped us with gathering data. There's a lot of data that we had to gather. I went to all the convenience sites and met your convenience site crew. You've got great people out there. You really do. I mean, one of my takeaways is the folks at these convenience sites, they're looking after the county. I know they're part-time workers. It gives them something to do. So it's good for them. It's good for the county, but they're doing a good job. Okay. So the county, as you know, about 16,000 people, 6,700 housing units. Now this is census. Why the housing units is important, and we'll kind of come full circle to this, is because you've got the $3 a month fee that you get based on meters, which is basically housing units. So the revenue piece of how you pay for this landfill is coming in a couple of different buckets, just like you do with everything in your budget. But one of the buckets is this $3 fee. So the county, Blackstone, about 3,300 people, Crew, 2,200 people, and then, Burkeville, of course, about 400 people, pretty small. So the convenience centers are important because how much waste do they actually take? Well, I'll talk a little bit about the total waste that's coming in a minute. But so the residents right now have several options. They can go to the convenience centers. They can hire somebody to pick up their trash. They can have their town pick up their trash if they're in a town. And some of the towns like Blacksburg will go outside of the town boundaries a little bit if you'd like to. They actually charge more for that, but they will pick it up for you. Or they bring it, they bring the trash to the landfill. So each site is a little different. Blackstone has one. You've got 3 compactors at all of your sites. There's 3 sites that have compactors, I should say. The compactors really are an important thing because what you'll see here is the compactors are saving you a lot of money. The open tops get pretty expensive because if you think about it from this perspective, when landfill trucks come to pick up a container and it hooks up a big compactor that weighs 6 tons on average, okay, and it runs it to the dump and it comes back. If the next container it picks up is an open top and it weighs 2 tons, you use the same labor, the same gas, the same everything, but you only haul 1/3 of the weight. So compactors are really saving you. They do a great job with them. They're basically dumping everyone once a week. So they're packing them pretty tight, but that's how a compactor works. A compactor doesn't compact until it really starts to get tight. And some of the busy sites, we put 2 compactors in because we want to pack one as much as we can. And in fact, we've got compactor records where you've gotten almost 10 tons in a compactor. If you can get 8 or 10 tons on average, again, savings could even be greater because then there's less trips that you have to go pick them up. So 2 compactors allows you to pack one and then not get yourself in a pickle waiting for the next one. You can fill that up. You don't have to throw it in an open top and so on. But again, that's somewhat down the road, but I think that's a good point of reference. And you can see how the sites are a little different. Kind of their tonnage, their compactors or their open tops, and how many tons they handle. Overall, about 3,000 tons a year get picked up out of the sites in 900 containers, which is about 17 loads a week, 75 a month, and about 18% of your total volume. So 20% of your volume is going to convenience centers. Towns get some of the rest, private people get the rest. Some people just, handle their own. So the compactors, though, have an average of 7 tons per load. And while the compactors are only 17% of the hauls, they handle 37% of the tonnage. And the open tops average only 2.6 tons. So 80% of the containers are these inefficient, running back and forth, but they only handle 63% of the tonnage. If we were to get 8 tons per load, like tomorrow we could put a compactor at every site, and you pretty much got rid of the open tops for the most part, because just about everything that goes in the open top you could put in a compactor. Yeah, sometimes a great big couch might not be a good thing to put in, but you really could put just about anything household trash in there, which is supposed to be really household trash. If it was big construction, it should go to landfill. So, but 8 tons per load, you'd have 375 boxes. You'd save 500 trips to the landfill in 1 year. Okay, so that's fuel, that's labor, that's all those things. So again, just kind of put that in perspective, because the economies of scale and compaction really are important when you're handling waste. Your convenience centers, are working great the way they operate. Your schedule, which you have. So where are they? You did a pretty darn good job over the years scattering them proportionally. They're in a good location. I talked to some counties and they have them all in the wrong places. You've got them in the right places. They're where the people are. Yeah, there's a couple that are smaller. There's a couple that are a little larger. But in general, it's pretty good balance of where your sites are. And of course, the landfill again is in a great place too, because it's kind of in the middle of the county, in the middle of the population. You're all familiar with these sites, I'm sure, but so that's Blackstone. Compactor there, and then occasionally you'll have some open tops there, weekends or heavy times. Davis Mill Road, kind of a little sleepy site, just 2 containers. The landfill itself, which is a little site, there's 2 30-yarders here that the citizens can come to. They don't have to go to the scale, they just dump their trash. Bible Road has a compactor sitting up in here. It's not a very clear picture, but it's right up in here. Okay, so Burkeville, or Lewiston Road, again, busy site. That's one of your heaviest sites. That compactor is packed. The reason it's packed is because it's got more garbage. Again, gets to my point. The compactor feels like it's really straining. It's doing its job. And this one, because of the volume of trash, it's at that peak. So it's really peaking every week for that once a week pickup. And that box is, again, I've seen, you've got numbers in here 10 times. And then Willie's. Again, kind of a sleepy little site. That has a 20-yard container. Very light containers, not a lot of trash. Okay, the landfill. We talked about the landfill a little bit when I started. This is the closed cell, demolition cell, and this is where your active trash is going now. Okay, so county collections. The county also, the landfill staff, also handles 20 and 30-yard containers for regular customers. And they charge for that, like a service. It's currently $150 per pickup. They charge rent for if it's there for an extended period of time, because it is a piece of equipment that's staying on their site. And then they charge your disposal rate at the gate, the 42 a ton. Piedmont Hospital, Fort Barefoot, Piedmont Correctional was a fairly large one. You're no longer doing that. That went to the private sector. They're collecting it now. And then Hendricks Farm, I think, has about 2 loads a week, you say, Gary? Yeah. There's about 2 loads a week. So overall, they do about 20 loads a week. So if somebody calls up and is cleaning out their yard or cleaning out or has a construction site, they might call and ask for a container, and that's where it is. So that's about 20 loads a week. Average maybe about 15 a year, about 700 load. So those roll-off trucks that the county has are picking up the county convenience site trash, and then they're handling any of this other work as well. Okay, so landfill operations, and they do this on pretty small staff. You got 3 full-time employees and 3 part-time employees that run the landfill, that handle those 1,500 loads a year that get picked up, and kind of everything else that happens over there. And then, of course, you got the convenience site workers. I think there's 17 of those that rotate on a part-time basis. So those folks are in your solid waste fund budget. So the landfill, as I said, has about 4 years of capacity left. So basically until 27 at historical volumes. And your volumes haven't really changed a lot. They kind of up edge and flow. And when they go up a little bit, it's because something special happened. Like, the Fort had a big event or a lot of people. Those are the things that'll spike your tonnage back and forth, but generally not too much. So we talked about what's left. So cell 6, once completed, would give you another 8.5 years of capacity, and would be full December 2035, roughly. So again, the 2 dates to kind of think about is the 27 date, which isn't that far away, but we got time, or the 35 date. But the 35 date, you got to spend a lot of money to get to 35. That's what we're going to talk about. So the options for the landfill are this. You could close the landfill on July 27 or later. And I say later because you could end up with a little bit more capacity once you do the final closing. We're going to do a survey in July to double check the volume that's left. See, we know how much trash it's supposed to take. We have a calculation of the volume. But how dense that trash packs, kind of like the compactor story, is how much room's left in that landfill. So over time, landfills settle. Some of it is compaction that Gary does every day, but some of it is over time it settles. So we go back and survey the landfill, we find, oh, we've got, there's 8 foot of space on this part of the back landfill. It was at the right elevation 5 years ago, but now we just lost 8 feet, 10 feet. That happens, and it's happened. So we're going to get a new calculation, and we'll be able to update these numbers a lot more accurately based on the tonnage. But this is based on what was done. If we build cell 6, it's going to cost about $2.2 million. Now, based on the volume that goes into that cell, that would be roughly $12 a ton. So again, we're going to talk about numbers in tons because it's really a little easier to wrap our minds around it. So that's $12 a ton in capital money you have to take out of the general fund to pay for that, or do a loan for that amount of money. And then the final closure in 27, you're going to need your closure fund, and we're going to talk about that, is going to have to be increased because the closure fund goes up every time you make the landfill bigger, because there's more landfill to cover and there's more landfill to take care of for 30 years after it's finally closed. So you're going to need an estimated $9 million in 27 if you build this next cell. That'll go up each year for inflation, and then an additional 3.7 million for the final cell and inflation reserve. So that reserve number is going to be 10, 12, $13 million by 2035. It'll be a big number. So your daily tonnage. So in 2020, you did 18,000 tons. 21, 22, you're up a little, you're up to about 20,000 tons. That's about 65 tons a day if you average it out. Now you got big days, but you have very little days. You have little days too, based on when the convenience centers are closed sometimes, and weather and all those things. That's the average. So you get about 650 loads go to that landfill, come across that scale every month. And that's the county's vehicles and everybody else. So there's a lot of other people that come to your landfill. I'm kind of skipping ahead, but it's important here because that was a number that I was having not trouble getting, but I would have liked to have been more accurate on some of those numbers. But up until 3 months ago, your scale was almost manual scale. You were writing down the numbers, and the administration had to almost transcribe some of these things. Some people had great penmanship, some didn't. You now have a scale computer there, and you got a copy of the scale computer in the back of your book to show you what it looks like for the month of April. So now we've really got some really good data that can show all the numbers, all the trucks, all the tons, who's heavy, who's light, and it's there. We can start to really narrow this thing down and take a look at it, okay? But these numbers really aren't that far off. I did proof that one, and it's not that far off, really. But so again, where's it come from? So you got about 9,000 tons of paying customers. You've got 3,000 tons of the convenience center trash that nobody pays for directly. It's in the general fund or comes out of the fund. You have another 3,500 tons that Blackstone brings you every year that doesn't get charged. Another 1,700 tons from Crew and about 300 tons from Burkeville. So that's kind of that's the pie of how your trash splits up. And, the scale program there I just mentioned. So this is just your rate schedule. You're 42 a ton. Your tires are 200 a ton. They're so high because you have to stack them into a trailer, and then the trailer you have to pay to have those tires shredded. They get recycled, but it's very expensive to have that done. And then of course sludge comes in. All right, so this is, I have a picture of that, a large one end in your book, so you can see it a little bit. There's pieces behind it are bigger ones that help you see it. This really lays out how it works. So this is cell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're in 5 right now, and this final one would be built. Again, sometime in 26, maybe. And it shows the whole landfill property. So this is the old landfill here and the C, D, and D landfill there. So what does the cell look like when it's done? So your last cell, that's cell 5 you're looking at. Gary, what would that be? 18 maybe? 17?
Yeah, 18.
So that's what it looked like before any trash was put in. That's kind of the slice of bread of those cells. If you go back, that's this slice. You're looking at it right from here, looking that way. And that's what it looks like. So trash gets piled in there. It's already got quite a bit in there. And then it connects to this cell, to cell 4, and then has to go up essentially at a 3-to-1 grade and till it gets to the peak. And then the next cell will be to the left and we'll continue on. Again, that's a kind of a close-up of the cells. That's also starting to show some of the grading plans. So how do you fill it? So what Gary's doing now is fills this all up, and then starting from this edge has to go up at a 3-to-1 ratio. That's what these lines indicate, different elevations, so we can get to the peak. And as this gets bigger, he can then fill in the top as well, so long as these grades match. And what will happen after we do the survey, if we find that there's room in here, he can go back into some of these areas and fill them back in. Now you have partially closed some of it, but the closure is a little piece down in here that actually has a cap on it that was done years ago. But the rest of it is not what's called a final cap. It has an intermediary cap. It's really just soil, but it has to make sure it's maintained with some vegetation so there's no erosion, and you have to maintain it.
Mr. Hook, if I could
Sure.
clarify just one point. When you say that when they get to the top or to the peak and they can maybe add, fill it back in, are you talking about what additional waste?
Mhm.
Okay. All right.
See, the height is based on the width, because if you do a 3-to-1 grade, so if I have this wide and I do 3-to-1, I come to eventually a plateau. If I was wider, I could get higher and narrow, shorter. So that's kind of the limiting factor of the elevation here, is that you've got to maintain these side slopes so that water runs off them properly, because we don't want rainwater going in the landfill. We want the rainwater to wash off, and we want the landfill juice to stay in the leachate.
Mhm.
And then this one, that's a final. So someday when the landfill is finished, that's what it will look like. That's with the last cell built. That's with, these are basically stormwater channels that will take the water off the landfill. Now this one's very busy. Even at this size, it's hard to see, but I do have one in here for you. We had this discussion today with a group from our firm and some other firms. People think that landfills are a dump. Well, they are, but they are very engineered. There's a lot of science that goes into them. And I'm sure you can attest to, because you've seen the budget, a lot of money goes into it. So every one of these little blocks is a well, is a groundwater well, even though it's lined and even though it's not going to leak. And we really don't have cases of leaking from a lined cell. It's your old cell that's leaking. We have to monitor all of these on a regular basis and look at hundreds of constituents, contaminants, to make sure they're not there. And if they are there, we have to take measures either to correct them or mitigate them. And then, again, that's just groundwater. In this drawing, there's also stormwater outfalls that have to also be monitored and tested. And then there's gas probes. So landfill, when it decomposes, produces gas. Your landfill is small enough that it's not required to have what's called an active system. There's an active and an inactive system. An inactive system is just essentially vents that vent it. Active is you have to actually pull it and pump it. If the landfill was bigger or got bigger, you'd have to do that, have an active system. But nevertheless, we have to check the surface of the landfill to make sure there's no methane coming off of it. And then we have to check all these probes. They're like wells. They're kind of like wells, but they're not as deep. And they tell us whether any gas from the trash is migrating away from the landfill, which we don't want. It's a bad thing. But they have to be checked regularly too. So recycling in a rural county, and again, I didn't give you my resume, but I've been with Draper and TRC for, I guess, about 5 years now. My background, though, is 20 years here in Virginia in solid waste. As a former public works director, formerly ran a landfill for a county, and I was actually a county administrator in a very rural county, very similar to your county, in Madison County. So I'm very sensitive to the things that you need here in this county and things you can and can't do. Recycling is one of the things that's challenging for a rural county. But in planning, I think recycling can be added to this, because if we can divert some of the volume, and some of it's already happening. So the tires are recycling, some of the metals that are able to be pulled out of recycling, appliance metals, things like that. Some of that's happening. And then your businesses are doing some of their recycling on their own, which we capture that tonnage. In a rural community, the best way to do recycling is at a drop-off center. So to set up things in the future where there could be a container at the landfill, that people could bring cardboard, that they could bring aluminum cans or tin cans or things like that, that could be done. It could be done at the convenience centers too. The challenge with that, again, gets back to cost and weight. So just the same thing I told you, a 30-yard container of aluminum cans, even though the value is high, aluminum is a very good commodity, it's going to weigh 500 pounds of aluminum. If you put cardboard in an open container, it's going to weigh 1,000 pounds, maybe, if you're lucky. So even though it may have a value, the transportation and handling offsets any of the benefits. But those are things that we can look at, so long as we look at them smart and we look at them as part of a bigger plan. So maybe the convenience centers, certainly at the landfill someday, that would make the most sense. And it is fairly central. There was also a letter that was sent to Mr. Costin just recently about recycling. You know, a company like this, there are some nonprofits that are out there that are trying to develop options for communities. This one's pretty expensive. I mean, I understand why they're charging it, but it is expensive. But those type of programs may be an option that, you know, you could consider at some point. Okay, so let's get into the numbers a little bit. Everybody loves numbers. So the county's been funding the landfill through, it's not self-sustaining. So obviously, if this was an enterprise fund or a separate authority, you'd want it, the income to match the expense. You're nowhere near that. In black and white, it doesn't look so bad, but again, the devil's in the details with the numbers. So your 22 expense was $1.2 million. Your income was $1.2 million. You were about 30,000 short, is what it would show from the budget standpoint. Now, Mr. Costin and the folks in the administration have been working for a couple years to get the numbers in the right buckets, because at one point your fuel wasn't in your budget. At one point, some of your other costs weren't in the waste budget. So it was a little misleading on where the costs were. They've got all the costs now in there. I don't even think in 22 they were all there, but 23 they are. In the 23 budget, they're there. In 24 for sure. So the number, if you look at it from historically, you say, wow, the number really went up. Well, the number really didn't go up it went up by inflation, but it didn't go up. It's $75,000 worth of fuel is in the budget this year. It wasn't in the budget 2 years ago. You paid it, but you paid it out of another line item. Okay. So, and that's not unusual. When I do this for counties, I really need to kind of scratch and dig and figure out where all the pieces are. And there's still some pieces that aren't really there. So if I divide this $1.2 million into the tonnage, which is 18 to 20,000 tons, I get $67 a ton is what your operating cost is, and you're charging 42. That's your operating cost. When I put in the capital cost of building a cell at about $12 a ton, okay, and then I put in the closure funds of about another $10 a ton. That's part of, you already have that money aside. So it's not, you don't have to come up with the money, but it's your money, citizens' money. We're about $89 a ton. If you were to run a business and say, how much is my cost? How much is I'm going to charge? Now, $89 a ton would make you probably the highest landfill in the state. Why? It's economies of scale. Landfills can be very efficient environmentally and economically, but they have to be just like the compactor. They have to be full and they have to have a lot of it. So think of it this way. If tomorrow you got 60 tons a day that came to you and said, we'd like to bring more waste to your landfill, and you took 60 more tons a day, those dollars would just drop right to the bottom line in improvement, because you wouldn't have to hire another bulldozer, or you wouldn't use a whole lot more fuel, because he's out there. Because the machine that's pushing the trash, just like the truck that picks up the trash, doesn't really care if it's pushing 1 ton or 6 tons.
Mr. Hope,
Uh-huh.
before we
Sure.
go straight too far, is something you said that some of the pieces aren't there yet. And I may be getting ahead of maybe something that's in here, but what's missing that you need?
Well, what do you mean, Doug?
When you were talking about like when the fuel was not in the right place and stuff
Right.
like that, you said some pieces may not be there yet.
Well, I think all the core pieces are there, but it's the acknowledgement of a couple of things. So the capital cost is one thing that doesn't show in the budget. So it's like if you ran a business and you had to buy a new tractor, you paid for it cash, but it's not in your operating budget, but you had to put that money out. So all that money that you've paid in the past and that you have sitting in reserve, you've got $7 million right now sitting in reserve to close the landfill according to the regulations, which is actually is notable, and not very few counties have been as fiscally responsible as your county. A lot of counties just say, oh yeah, we're good for it. And legally you can almost do that. But you've got the real dollars sitting there. You got the real dollars sitting there. So when the bill comes due, you got the check.
Yes.
Okay. And again, yeah, that's to your credit.
I don't think anybody's planning on moving away from that. That's been
Right.
a good plan of this.
It is.
But the $89 per ton where you're talking about,
Uh-huh.
and then again, I may be getting ahead of myself here, but what do you think is the target here of cost per ton? Getting it down to?
You're not going to get it down. You're not getting it down.
I'm talking about in the future.
You're not getting it down.
Oh,
You're never going to get, it's only going to go up.
see, all right, now you're telling me something.
It's only going to go up. I mean, I think you can save some money in places. I think you can save money in collection. I think you can save money in things, but the landfill cost is never going to work because your landfill's not big enough. If your landfill was 400 tons a day, you'd probably make some money and you could charge $42 a ton, or at least break even. But at your volume, so
But that would also shorten the life of what we got left too, though.
oh yeah, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. So the other number here, you see $215,000. That's with an adjustment that came out of the general fund, and where that came out of is how you're paying for this. So let me jump down to the next line, the cost allocation. You have a cost allocation plan that looks at administration and accounting and commissioner of revenue. Everybody's costs come in, and they apply certain dollars to each department. You got $258,000 was applied to the cost of the landfill. That goes on. That's not in any of those numbers above. That's more cost. Okay, so when we get to the capital cost, so you've got the $7 million sitting there now waiting for closure. DEQ this year, see, every year that number goes up. If you change something, or if you don't change anything, just inflation. Well, we've been fortunate. Inflation's been like 1-2%. This year it's 7.1%. So you're going to need another $500,000 in your closure. You don't do anything. That's coming. The bill is being printed as we speak, so to speak. Okay. So again,
So everybody, it's not a bill, it's an obligation.
Yes.
To cover the bill when it comes due.
yes.
And that's the obligated fund reserve.
Yep.
Right. So whatever we have obligated, we would have to add the 517,766 to what's already been obligated. And now that's, if you continue your solid reserve liquid process, the past practice that Mr. Vaughn just gave the okay on, then that's just going to sit there collecting interest, but it's going to be there. It's not going to be used for anything else.
So where's the revenue come from? Revenue comes from a couple of places. The utility dollars, the $3 a month, $36 a year equals 179,776 in 22, or 4,400 meters. Mr. Costa and I spoke about that a little bit, to see if we can maybe audit that, because that seems a little low, because based on the census, and it can be misleading, there may be nothing here, but we'll look at it. Based on the census, you're short 1,700 homes, which could bring you 60 grand. I wouldn't count that money until we can look at it further, but we'll look at it. The other money that's coming in is you have a communication tax that you get. There's nothing to do with the landfill. But of that communication tax, you're taking 75% of that money and you're putting it to the landfill to fund it, basically general fund money, so to speak, which is another $186,000. So 186,000, if we pull the 186 out of that number, that's going to make your deficit even greater. So you're funding it not through a special assessment, but through a revenue bucket that is completely legitimate to do, but you can do other things with the money, because 25% of it's going to E911. Now, I know E911's got big bills coming. Well, if they had all that money, that would help them with debt service for something else you have planned instead of funding the landfill, that tax. So that's part of where it's coming from. And again, the new scale has really helped us in really looking at the numbers, and I have attached a copy of it in there for you to look at. So this is a capacity analysis. It's in your book. Again, it's a lot of numbers, but basically what it's showing is how much life is left in the landfill based on the reported tonnages, and then we update it with the survey. This has not been done with the survey, I think, since probably 18, but we'll update it again. This is where I get the data that says you've got 4 years left. Okay, so, and again, this kind of shows you, his projection here in 22 is 12.6 years of life. That's where we get to the 35. Okay, so this is what we're all here about. What do you do? I tell you right now, there's no easy, quick answer, but this is where you have to start. And so I came up with 3 options. There's probably 10 deviations of those options within those options, but I broke it down to 3. So the first option is just keep the landfill. We know what the costs are. You are funding it. You're able to manage it. You are in the red. You are subsidizing it, but that's what you're doing. When in 27, we have to spend about $2 million to build the next cell. That'll get you out to 35. So you could essentially do nothing but understand that a bill's coming for $2 million. Plus you're your reserves are gonna grow. And they'll be good out to 35, and you kind of keep things the way they are. We could help you tweak things around the edges, maybe save some money, help on hauling. There's things we can do, but it's not gonna be, we're not gonna get you there. So then you say, what happens at 35? Then what do we do? Well, then you could actually jump to one of the other options we're going to talk about at that point. Or you could build another cell, another piece of the landfill.
And none of us will be here in 2035.
That's right. But
And that includes you.
But one of the things that I learned from my time in government is what you folks are doing here today isn't for like a company that's got a 5-year budget. What you do today is for a community that's going to be here in 100 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know it's hard to get your mind wrapped around such big periods of time, but this county is going to be here. The government's going to be here in some form or function 100 years from now. So we're going to get there. And you're right. We may not, I heard this. I hear this a lot in government, and it's done a little bit tongue in cheek. People say, "Well, it'll last till I leave." Well, right, but we really want to leave it in pretty good shape so that we don't leave a mess for somebody else to clean up. Okay, we really need to plan. And so while business might do a 5 or 10-year planning window, doing a 20, a 30, 40-year planning window, 50-year planning window is not out of the ordinary, and especially for something like this. So we could build another, and I'll get to that next slide because I put that in here. So landfill expansion on the new part A and B. And this is important maybe for 2 reasons. You bought that additional property, which is always good to do for a landfill, even if you don't make a landfill, because a buffer is the best thing you could ever have for a landfill. Now, you don't have a lot of people encroaching on you, but nevertheless, the more room you have, the better. Because if one of those wells goes bad, if this well someday becomes a problem, I can put another well here or here, and we'll contain it within your site. If somebody else owned this property, you got a big problem, expensive problem.
Mhm.
So the more room you can get around the landfill, the better. So reset this. How did I make it darker? Okay, so there's 2 ways to potentially expand this landfill. You've got a little bit of you've got some wetlands and streams in here that you have to deal with, which are very difficult to permit and do. One option is to build another landfill, a long strip. But again, to my point, when you have a long strip, you're limited to how high you can get, and you're limited to capacity. So if we did this, we could get you about 28 acres, a 1 million cubic yards of capacity. That's going to take you a long time to fill, but it still is going to be expensive because of the way it's designed, and it won't connect to this landfill. A better way to do it might be to do this, and you basically connect this landfill to this landfill, and now we could actually even raise this one up a little further and get a lot more trash in here. You can see that now we're up to 3.6 million. So we went from 1.7 to 3.6 million. We almost tripled the size by being able to do that. But the stream impacts and the wetlands are going to be time consuming and potentially costly to do. So we'd have to figure out if that made sense. But all of this has to go through a Part A and a Part B process, public hearings, EPA, Army Corps of Engineers. It's not for the faint of heart. I think it's doable in your sense. You're still in a good area. I think it's certainly doable, but again, it's going to be a lot of money. And again, we're in the business to do this, but I'm not recommending you do it because it's just a lot of money. And again, you don't have the tonnage. And well, we'll get to that in a minute because that's important. So sell or lease the landfill. So some smaller communities, Botetourt recently, Botetourt's a great example. Botetourt had its own landfill and it was nearing capacity. They had a private company came in and filled it up the rest of the way and closed it for them and built them a transfer station. That's in Roanoke though, and there was a need for tonnage and space and all of those things. They built a very nice convenience center. The citizens use the convenience center, the transfer station now, and it worked well for them. The problem that I think you're going to have, and we could explore these things simultaneously, and I have thrown out some trial balloons, but really what I found is, and it's a good news, bad news story. You really don't have any shortage of landfills around you. You've got lots of landfills around you. You've got Amelia, which is really in a drivable range for a roll-off truck. You've got Ludenberg down the other way. You've got and 4 other landfills around that really aren't that far. Generally, when you're transferring trash, you're thinking about 100 miles. You could be transferring trash that's 20 miles to reach these landfills. So there's capacity there. Amelia's capacity, I think, is 70 years right now. Ludenberg on paper doesn't show that much, but I think they probably could go that far too. So you've got a competitive, even just those two, and I think you have other people that might be interested. But because they're established and they're established in a couple other landfills, and you don't have a lot of industry around, a third player in the COG, Waste Management doesn't want another landfill because they've got all they need, and Meridian doesn't want another landfill. But would GFL want a landfill? Well, they might, but they don't have a lot of business around here, so it would be too far for them to transfer it in. If you sold the landfill, it would be with the understanding that they could expand the landfill. To your point, it would fill up real quick at 300 tons a day. But if it expanded, it could be sustainable for a pretty good period of time and may have a value. But I tell you that permitting it again is going to scare most folks away because it's not guaranteed. You can't say to them, we'll lease you the property, you can run the landfill you responsibly, you close it when you're done, and you get the permits. And they'll be like, there's too much risk. I just don't see where I can make that work. But I did explore that to some extent. But that expansion fits in both pieces, whether you keep it, if you keep it beyond the 35, or if you were to sell it. So the third one is the one that really has, I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of the punchline in advance. I think this one's probably the most viable option, but it has a lot of options within it. Oops, did I do that?
Buddy fell asleep.
No, I'm gonna stand by for you.
So with this option, what you do is you decide when you want to close the landfill. Again, 4 years or 2035. Okay. So again, you're not in a rush to do that, but you need to think about that now. You need to say to yourself, yeah, we want to close it in 27. We're not going to build the final cell. Or yeah, we're going to build the final cell and we're going to stick it out to then. If you close it ahead of time, you have spent some permitting money for that cell that you never built, that you won't recover. But I don't think that that's enough to change your mind. It'll still be, your closure will still be the 5 cells, and you'll have the money to do that.
Ms. Hope, you're saying that the loss in the permitting for cell 6,
You didn't use.
right? But the savings and what we would have to retain in revenue for closure far outweighs that.
It would.
Okay.
It would. Because, so, you spent money probably with our firm 20 years ago to get that permit.
Mhm.
A permitted landfill has a value. Now, it's possible that you could accelerate that. You could say, we'll build the final cell if we could find somebody that would bring us 200 tons a day every day. And yeah, it's going to accelerate everything and get you closed quicker. You'll build the next cell, but the profit will work because you're bringing in more trash. But you'd have to bring in some, if we could find it, again, I have to say I don't know that you could, but maybe if you could find somebody who's willing to bring you 10 trailers a day, okay, or even 5 trailers a day, 20 tons a piece, 100 tons, that would fill you up faster. We'd have to, we could either start building the cell sooner or still keep it on the same schedule and then just accelerate it in a couple of years and get it filled. Again, that just gets complicated, but we can run the numbers to see if there's an option.
And this would cause the 3 towns to have to bury their own trash, and as well as the county.
Well,
Yes, if you close it.
yeah, well, okay, I'll get to the closure. So how do you close it? So if you put out an RFP and said in the RFP, I want a company to give me an option, and there's so many variations here. But you could say, I want you to build me a transfer station. You want me to build it?
Go ahead.
You want me to build we want to put an RFP out to build a transfer station. Give me a price per ton to haul it and dispose it. Give me a price to run the transfer station, or you do it with county employees. You could do it either way. You could look at that. And then give me a price to pick up the compactors and run them either directly to your landfill or bring them to the transfer station. So there's a lot of different options and ways to do that. Based on then the towns. So what the towns could do is if you build a transfer station, even a modest one, they could still dump in the transfer station. And then that trash gets put into a trailer. The trailer holds about 20 tons. And that trailer it might go to Amelia, it might go to Lunenburg, it might go to Brunswick. It could even go a little further. And then you pay price for the trucking. You pay a price for the dumping fee. Give you an idea, Waste Management's tipping fee at Amelia is right around $30 a ton. That's about what you probably end up paying them. Right? And they would say, well, how can they do it 30, which costing us 89? Because they're handling 6,000 tons a day.
Right.
Amelia's not quite that big, but they handle a lot of tonnage. So their incremental costs are different. So by doing that, you can get out of the landfill business in 27, or you can get out of the landfill business, and I think you could even get a little further than 27, or you can get out of the landfill business in 35. You've got plenty of window here. Now, the towns could also go directly to the landfills if they wanted to. They're not that far. Blacksburg is really not far from Lunenburg landfill, Blackstone, and Crew, again, it's a 20-minute ride to go up to Amelia. So they could haul it directly there, because one of the things you don't want to do if you don't have to is double handle something. So double handle is going to cost more. So they could certainly put it in the transfer station, but then you got to pick it up, put it in a trailer, and then another truck. A garbage truck on a residential route generally weighs about 8 tons. So it's a pretty decent load. Again, that cost per mile isn't bad. So that could be an option. Or in this RFP, they could also ask for a proposal for a private company to pick up their trash and let them run it. And they'll run it back to the shop every day.
So if I'm hearing you right, we have the potential with an RFP in the very near future to cut our costs by 2/3 from essentially 90 to 30 potentially.
No.
No, oh, okay, because I was misunderstanding what you said about Amelia charging us 30 per ton.
You're still going to truck it there,
Okay,
and you're still going to have a transfer station
okay.
if you did it by transfer. Now, I think those 3,000 tons you could potentially move cheaper right away.
Mhm.
So if you put out an RFP tomorrow and said, give me a price on per haul and per ton, I think you might get a competitive number. And that, again, like I said, there's some short-term things that you could do. So think of it this way. If you took 3,000 tons out of your waste stream, your life of your current cell even goes further.
Mhm.
Now, it's not going to get any cheaper. It's not going to reduce a lot of costs because, again, you're pretty bare bones staff already, but it'll give you some more life. And the towns, you could negotiate with the towns to go directly to the landfill instead of coming to your landfill. That's also fine. That would, again, give you more life if you wanted to make that last little piece last a little longer.
But isn't that a double-edged sword? The longer life we give it, the more we're being charged for inflation each year.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Absolutely.
all right.
Absolutely. So, I have, and you can go through this and look at it, but this is the chart of your convenience centers and how far they are and time to drive. Again, I just use Google Maps, so a truck might take a little bit longer, but that's how far they are. And you can see Amelia's actually, if you just straight add them up, is actually less miles and less time than even Ludenberg. But there are counties out there, Pennsylvania County, where I actually worked as public works director and ran their landfill. That county's 1,000 square miles. We were running longer than that with boxes to the landfill every day. So that could be a good way to take some of the waste out, because when we build you a convenience center, transfer station, we want to build you a station that meets your needs, but isn't the Taj Mahal. It doesn't have to be. It's basically a butler building or a pole barn. It's got some elevations that you need to build into it that really are the most expensive part of it, and some concrete. But it can be pretty basic to handle the amount of tonnage you have. And then it can handle your citizens that have bulk waste, or some of your little commercial company customers that come in, and so on. So that's certainly doable. Now, other landfills, though, when you look at this list, this is all the landfills around you. So, and I did this, I think I did this distance from your landfill. So 19 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, 35 miles, 41 miles. So you're in a good space. Your services aren't, and that's the good news, bad news. You don't need your landfill here because there's plenty of alternatives for you. And with 70, 60 years of life, and that's not even, it could be some. So if we're talking about planning 30 years, well, here we could plan for 70 years. And then a transfer station, though, also gives you the ability to expand upon it someday. If you had to expand the transfer station, you could haul it further. So that same truck that's only going 20 miles today, maybe with recycling, we get your volume down, other technologies change, we do some things. Now you only have 30 tons a day, and we put it in a trailer, and maybe we run it 100 miles to the landfill because the landfills all around here might have closed.
Is there, now you've got where you say the sixth sale has already been permitted over the years.
Mhm.
Now I'm just, of course, throwing something at the wall here, but because that's already permitted, if we wanted to build a tipping station instead of the sixth sale, is that location that's already permitted, would that be useful?
No, the permitting of the transfer station isn't that difficult. They're what's called a permit by rule. They're not as difficult to permit as we do them all the time.
Okay.
So we would look at your site and put it in a place that makes the most sense. I mean, it might be where your shop is. You need the scale, which but
we can utilize what we got. We don't have to look.
And that's why I said the best place to put transfer station is at the landfill, because we don't have to build you new infrastructure. Yeah, we can put it anywhere. You find a field, that's great, but it's going to cost a lot more money to do that. You've already got the things you need. You got scale, you've got some space, you've got stormwater, groundwater, you've got all those things. So
You also mentioned a centralized location.
and you've got a centralized location. So yeah, I think that's kind of a no-brainer that's where you end up.
Okay.
So I put this as conclusions and next steps. It's what I think you need to just think about all of what I've said tonight, and feel free to call me, text me, email me with questions, or I'll be glad to come sit with you one-on-one or two-on-one and, discuss this further and kind of kick some ideas around. What we'd like you to consider ultimately as a board is a path.
Mhm.
So for you, what we did with our proposal was we split it up into two phases. This is phase one. Phase one is just understanding and looking at the options. Once you look at them all and you say, and it's not a commitment, it's because you're always going to change your mind, things could change, but you want to say to me, we like this path, take this path and drill this down and get me some better timing, dollars on how this might work. And then we're going to consider that. And then we'll think about if that's the way we want to go or not.
Well, and for me, there's a couple of things. Number one, the cost to the taxpayers, but also the employees there. You know, we definitely don't want to make sure that we're putting our people in the street. You know, we want to make sure that whatever we do, they're going to be there with at least a reasonable wage to be able to continue to live their lives with the salaries that they have now. Yeah, it doesn't it take 5 years to get that permit roughly, to get another permit to like open a new section of a landfill?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. To do that other permitting, yeah,
Mhm.
probably 5 years. You know, we're working on the permit for Cumberland County right now. Cumberland County is trying to build a landfill. And Cumberland County has got a host agreement, so Cumberland County stands to make $5 or $6 million a year, make $5 or $6 million a year as a host community. That the company will pay them for being there. Sussex did it with Atlantic Waste. King George does. King George just gets $7 million a year from Waste Management just for having a landfill in their county. And so a lot of rural counties have seen this as a way to really help with their tax base and generate some money. We have been working with them for over 5 years to try to get the permit. It's still not a done deal.
Well, we've got a massive capital plan that we have got to put together. I mean, you're talking the complex, the radio station tower, this right here. I mean, just for me, but of course,
Find a way to generate some revenue to cover all that.
that's right. Yeah, we have to have the most reasonable option. And I mean, I see what you're talking about, where you're talking about some of these little minor things. I know don't nobody want to hear this because convenience is what those centers are called, but there may be two of those centers that you may want to look at shutting down because they're, like you said, they're out there and they got minimum reflective stuff. I mean, that's a minimum savings, and I know it's going to upset some people, but I mean, when they look at what this capital plan may run, I think they'll start appreciating what we're doing. I mean, they may be upset because they can't go to the closest one to them, but
I didn't mention that, but that's always an option. It is politically difficult to close a convenience center because people get used to it, you know, and you know, we're all creatures of habit, and we expect our trash to get picked up or a place to bring it, and it's just to give it. And in a rural community, you know, a rural community says, well, you know, you don't do that much for me, and that's okay. But the few things you do for me, you know, at least do a few things for me, you know. So, you know, take my trash for me, okay? You know, make sure that, you know, 911 works when I call. You know, they don't ask for a lot in a rural community, but by the same token, you know, it's a balancing act. So, you know, that's in your unenviable positions to make those decisions on you know, where that balance is. But so if you close a landfill today, you're still going to have to take care of it for 30 years. And it's still going to be expensive. Now, it's not going to be as expensive as it is today, but many costs will start to go down. Equipment, for example. So, for example, you're paying about $250,000 a year for leasing equipment. If you close the landfill, pretty much that goes away. I mean, you may need one piece of equipment in the transfer station, but basically the equipment goes away.
in 4 years, you save $1 million.
Right.
Well, actually, as the years go over.
Oh yeah, that's going to
The
grow.
fuel, yeah,
The
that's
fuel,
it, yeah.
all the fuel costs, all that. It also gives you an opportunity to make things right. And I know this can be sensitive too, but you could eliminate that tax completely and come up with either a better way to fund it. And so the better way to fund it could just be from the tipping costs. So once all the other expenses are come out, you know, the towns can pay for their own trash if they want to collect it. Citizens come to the transfer station, they pay what it costs, and it basically runs like an enterprise fund. So it'll give you the opportunity to tweak some of your revenue. And again, that $170,000 a year that you're taking out of your communication tax, put it back into your E911, or put it back into, you know, some other program that's important for the county.
And didn't you say we could get rid of that $3 tax on the electrical bill too, or will we need to keep that in place?
Well,
You can't increase it.
No, I'm saying, I know you can increase it, but can we remove it if we get it going?
I think you can. I don't see any reason why you couldn't remove it. The problem is you need a plan to replace the revenue, because that is going to drop $170,000 worth of revenue.
Right.
So it may make sense to keep it and just, you know, it's a piece that continues, but you've got to come to grips with the towns then, because the towns, $3,500, 3,500 tons a year, Blackstone's bringing in.
Mhm.
Okay, so, and, just to put that in perspective,
105.
150,000 a year. Okay, $150,000 a year. Now,
And see, when we decided to let the towns close their landfill and just have one landfill, and there was a mutual agreement that we would work together.
Mhm.
And this past time, they didn't want to go along with it, but that's not the agreement we made.
Right. I think with the capital plan, as we move along with this, I think we definitely should at least ask the towns to be in the room.
No, we need to sit down and negotiate with the towns again and let them know that this is what was done.
So that was a question I was going to ask Bernie. Can we get this electronically so I can share it with the towns?
Mhm.
Okay,
certainly.
because I thank you for documenting the fact that you met with the towns. And Supervisor Rourke, to your point about the staffing concerns, when we get to that point that you've picked which path you want to go down, Ernie, in your analysis, in your financials, I'll assume you'll have your staffing costs included in that. Okay. Could you break out what those staffing numbers would be? How many people would you need full-time? How many people would you need part-time? Or some way to have some idea of how many.
The fact that
Look, this man can go anywhere and find a job. Hey, don't worry about him, okay? He knows what he's doing.
you run so lean right now. I mean, if you had a transfer station, you're still going to need somebody to scale, and you're going to need somebody running, loading the trucks. Okay, you're going to need 2 or 3 people anyhow. You only have 3 people now full time anyhow.
Yeah.
So it's not a far stretch to balance that properly.
But I think if I'm tracking you correctly, it's almost like, number one, this could potentially free up money back into emergency services.
Mhm.
And we could stop at $7+ million right now and stop it from growing into 12 million for closure.
Yes.
I mean, that's almost a no-brainer. It's almost like, I want to look at you and say, you're crazy. It's no way that's real. I mean, but it is. That's why it's been the severed arm of Nottoway County. And I mean, we have got to find a better way for this.
So let's say you choose to close the landfill after you fill the next cell sometime around 25, 27. You already have the money for it.
Mhm.
See, to build the next cell, you don't have the money yet.
Right.
But to close it, you have the money. So you just take the money you have and you close it. That fund then goes down. So the fund now is only going to be it'll probably end up being about $3 or $4 million. And yeah, that'll get adjusted for inflation, but that's to guarantee that you take care of it after it's closed, the well monitoring, the gas monitoring, all those things. That number actually is a declining number because it's based on a cost for 30 years. So in 25 years, in 20 years, that number starts to shrink. Inflation will grow it, but some of the other parts will shrink it. And I know 30 years is a long time from now, but 30 years from now, you could be done with it. You could put solar panels on that landfill. Actually, you could put solar panels on it sooner if you wanted to. But you won't have that. That liability eventually goes away. We can put a dart on the board and say, on this date, we don't have any more financial assurance, and our landfill costs basically have dwindled to nothing. Cumberland's a good example. Cumberland County, we handled their landfill and closed it for them. They're out of their 30-year window. They're closed. They're done.
Well, Ernie, I think I may have one more question, but if we get this capital plan, that's one thing, but it's almost like what you're telling me here is that this could be helpful to the citizens right now to maybe bring in additional trash to close that in less than 4 years. But can we have a tipping station and these guys ready to work if that closes sooner?
Yeah, I'd say you need about 20. If you were to, say tomorrow we want to build a transfer station, or we want to put it out to bid or build a transfer station, probably 2 years is a good window. 3 the most. So you're really right in that window that you could start the planning of it now.
You like that?
When I
When it's fun.
I didn't know more answer what you all decide. I'm going going either way.
You're gonna do it. You just gonna do it.
One of the things, and I don't know if you'll be able to find it, but it's possible. In the RFP, you can say to somebody, build me a transfer station at their cost and engineering and everything. And I'll guarantee I'll give you my trash for the next 25 years.
Interesting.
And they cover the cost of building it. That happened in Botetourt, but Botetourt had a lot more trash. Your disability in this case is that you don't have enough trash. Okay, first we wanted more, now we don't want more. It goes both ways, but it's possible. But even worst case scenario, if you build a modest transfer station, it's cheaper than $2.2 million to build an Excel. And then you amortize that out for a long time. Again, you could pay for it in cash, or you could take a loan on it, and depending where interest rates are, again, that's again a financial question, but it's certainly you have your overall reserves in this county. Again, kind of a county administrator in me, I kind of looked under the sheets and saw all your numbers. Got a great county. You've got some great reserves. You've got a very envious position. You've got a low tax rate. You're doing all the things you need to do, and you got a lot of money in the bank.
Can you check out an ad in the local papers and put that out there?
I'm on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
But you do, and so you're in a good position. Debt service. Your debt service is very low. Debt service isn't a bad thing. It's okay to have a mortgage and a credit card so long as you're responsible with it. Some counties aren't responsible with it. You're the other side of the equation. You're over good with yours. I mean, you've got an 800 credit rating, which is good.
And Ernie, when you were talking about getting another company to build a transfer station and we giving them our trash, would that mean they would be servicing the sites and stuff, or we still do that? Because like I said, I got to make sure
You can make it any way. What they would do is they could run the transfer station for you. And I'll tell you why sometimes that's good. Because you want that trailer to be heavy every time it goes over the road. Because if they're going to charge you per ton, that's how you want it to do it. Because then I don't care. You charge, if your trailer has 1 ton, I'm only going to pay for 1 ton.
That's right.
Right.
There you go.
But if you load it, then what the game is, well, he didn't load it, it's not that heavy. And so I got fixed cost. My fixed cost is, $200 per trip. So I'm going to charge you $200 whether there's 10 tons in it or 21 tons. You want 21 in it every time. If they load it, then they're responsible for it. And it's not a lot of people. It's I've seen contracts where it's one person that runs a front loader, really a backhoe, and they're responsible for picking up the trash, putting it in the trailer, making sure the weights are right. Another driver comes, their driver will come and pick it up with the tractor trailer. So that's a done. And the landfill takes care of its own piece. So if you could structure a deal like that, that's why I like those deals, because I don't like counties getting disputes with vendors saying that the box trailer wasn't full enough.
I got you. If our guys are there, they're looking at for Nottoway.
Yeah. So, but if the trailer's not full, the contractor is going to pull it. When I was in Madison County, I went to Waste Management and told them, this trailer's not, they were loading it. And they said, well, we can't always know how much it is. I said, put it over the scale. Oh, but that's hard. I said, I don't care. I'm paying you per load, and I want every load to be 20 tons. Otherwise, I'm not going to pay you anymore.
We need to upgrade our skill down there.
Depending on the trailer length, 48-foot trailers are hard to, get on those
You
scales.
may have to upgrade it to the
Okay.
scale at some point.
Okay. I mean, I thought that was probably going to be a given anyway.
Yeah,
It's probably end of life, pretty close on
I was
that.
trying to say, how old is that scale?
well, the scale itself is not old. It's just the position of it
Yeah, okay.
and how you would approach it with larger trailers and 48-foot, better fit for a 45-foot trailer.
But all those things we can look at. And then, we didn't talk about leachate. And I know that, you've had discussions with that. That's going to be a problem in the future to deal with because of PFAS. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
It's everywhere.
PFAS is-
Solids everywhere.
and so again, this would get you the sooner we get it closed with the liner on top of it, because the same liner goes on the bottom, goes on the top now. As soon as we get it closed, we can stop any infiltration of liquid and rain, and the leachate volume will again start to go down.
See, that's a good plan right there. I mean, that's because they charge 10. Yeah, it's nasty. Yeah.
We in charge like good, and we put out a lot of leachate.
So, I mean, landfill is an expensive operation because it is, again, the public thinks it's just a hole in the ground. There's a lot of engineering, a lot of science, a lot of environmental concerns. I mean, you're doing the right thing for the environment and it's expensive. And there isn't a shortcut. We can't not do these things.
Well, did you have anything else? Did y'all?
No, but again, I'll make the offer. I come back and meet with you, 2-on-2, 1-on-1, emails, texts. Look through this. I'm sure you'll have some questions.
There's a lot of good information there. I mean, really it is. I think y'all done a very, very solid job in phase 1 here anyway. I gotta admit, I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked.
It's a lot of depending too on the citizens.
Yeah. You gotta go to a public hearing.
You have to have public hearing and you're gonna get the nickel.
Well, if you build a transfer station,
That's the way to go.
I don't think you'll get much opposition from the citizens closing a landfill because it actually give them a better place.
Mhm.
Because right now we don't want small loads and citizens on top of the landfill, but sometimes they do with their pickup trucks and that. Well, now they're going to be on concrete the whole way. They're not going to get nails in their tire. They're not going to get muddy.
Them big rocks busting the tires.
It's a cleaner operation. So from a citizen's perspective, the convenience centers they have, I think upgrading them over time is important. I think you should put compactors in every one that you decide to long-term keep. I think you should look at 2 compactors in some of the bigger sites.
What do you think about those ones in Buckingham? They've got that integrated system where you can pull up and it reads your car just like an easy pass and bam, and the treasurer can go in and deactivate it if you ain't paid your taxes. What do you think about them? Did they seem to hold up or?
Well, they're charging at the convenience centers, right? They're charging for the
If we
waste?
did it,
Yeah.
if we implemented
Right.
and put them in and put like 2 compactors at each site, 'cause how many compactors we got now?
Just 3.
We
You know
got,
what they cost?
yeah,
Think of this.
it ain't gonna be $5 million just close this thing.
But when we put those in, that was $80,000 a piece.
That ain't bad though. That ain't bad overall.
Charging
Now, look how long ago that's been.
charging citizens for their waste at the convenience centers has been done plenty of places. That is very difficult though. That will bring out, that will fill your hole.
Like I said, no, like if the county, from what I understand, Buckingham put in some units and they've got them fenced in.
Right.
And they come with 4 cameras. And they said there's roughly the systems was
Oh,
about $100,000.
So you don't have the operator there.
That's right. So when you pull up, it
Right.
indicates your active reader and you can pull in and dump, and actually it makes them 24 hours a day. But if you go in there and dump something that you ain't supposed to, well, guess what? It got whose card you used to come in there, and then you got the camera coverage as eyes on site. So if somebody rolls in there with a trailer, cuts their lights off, that don't mean nothing. You know whose tag they use, and the police can take care of that.
And that could work, but I will say to you, your employees,
Mhm.
those 17 part-time employees, I mean, they are the salt of the earth. They're just
Right, I get
local
it.
folks that look after you. It's almost a community, especially in a rural community. So people go to dump their trash on Saturday morning. It's like a community. And
Yeah.
your part-time workers, you're not paying them a lot. You don't have benefits for them. You're just giving them, and that's good for them because it's a couple of extra dollars for them. They're on fixed incomes.
Mhm.
So those employees are serving you pretty well.
Okay.
And they're not that expensive. So
Yeah.
can we put a fancy camera system and do all that? Yeah, but I don't know if that would. But there are counties that are charging to go to the convenience center. So every time you go, Stafford County, for example, they have a massive convenience center. They charge $5 per haul, and they're losing money on it. I mean, losing a lot of money. But they can't, they would be at the board meeting pitchforks if they tried to increase it to $10.
Yeah. But I don't think that's ever really come up here for anybody here to charge in there. So I don't think that's.
But the same thing, think of it this way, that is what you give the citizens in a rural community. But 3,000 tons is another $150,000 a year that you're not getting any revenue from. So when you look at that shortfall of revenue, you got 3,000 from the convenience centers, you got 3,500 from Blackstone, you get another almost 2,000 the other ones. All that tonnage you're taking for free What goes into the scale is about $300,000 from businesses and everything else, but there's a lot that doesn't pay.
Yeah.
Probably half of your tonnage doesn't pay. So your $42 a ton is really $22 a ton.
Mm. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Very much.
Well, thank you again. Greatly
Good
appreciate it.
information. Yeah.
Y'all got something to think about. Gary said, tighten up, and tell me what to do.
If anybody's interested, this is like the full set, the permit of what goes into how this landfill gets built. And there's all the plans. Some of them you have, but there's many more in here to kind of show how this landfill is designed. I can leave that with you.
Thank you.
Like,
I'm sure the original set is somewhere in my office.
yeah, somewhere.
Gary, you're welcome to stay. If you would head on, it's up to you. You're more than welcome to stay.
I mean, when I was asking if anybody had any questions, I meant you too, you know.
Only question I have is, you know, with it when you're outside, I love the working man, because I've been doing for the last 50 years.
Yeah, absolutely. You and your team has been a godsend, man. That's for sure. And I think you see it's clear that we're gonna do whatever we need to do, but
Yeah, but I mean,
we're gonna take care of y'all.
I'm in weird County, Greensboro, and I mean, I had already talked to Bill Hayes and some of their staff a couple of years ago. You know, coming down the road, the best way to do is the transportation. I mean, it's just, we don't want to try to permit that other.
I wish Mr. Vaughn was in here. He's saying that right now.
Permit that other 80 acres over there is gonna be a headache. You
Yes.
know, you still got people sitting out here.
It's gonna be a
The neighbor to that 80 acres over, he's already called. I don't know what y'all gonna do. I said, I don't know. But I don't think Father know right now, it's not from Galilee, it's gonna be wild for anything. He said about it. He don't want it, you know.
Yeah, well, like he said, I mean, we got trash everywhere around us, thinking where it can be taken. So we got some good options right here, and it could potentially save the county millions in the very near future, which is something we're gonna need. We're gonna spend it somewhere else.
Well, ladies and gentlemen,
All right. Bye-bye.
Take care, Gary.
all right.
Oh, hold on one second. Just hold on one second. I want to talk to you about something.
Ms. Simmons, did you get a copy of the proposed agenda
Sorry, Gary, you
for
can't-
Thursday night? I was looking, I didn't see if you got it.
Everything's all right.
And I agree with him, you stretch that out, is that the part? Some all the time? Or just in general, sending out stuff?
I couldn't hear that far.
Could we possibly convert some, so, what if that was money?
No.
That's what I'm
No,
saying.
you don't wanna extend them.
That's what I'm saying, is extend.
Yeah, no, you don't want to extend it, you want to shorten it if anything.
That was my point.
Yeah.
I didn't have a point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all. I'll be in touch.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ernie.
Bye.
Ms. Vaughn, I think you got a copy of the next Thursday night's agenda right there. If y'all want to glance and see if there's anything you need to add in or take out.
So I'm sort of presenting this to you in light of the agenda item on tonight's agenda regarding the discussion with the vacancy of the election district 1 supervisor. So if you notice on this proposed agenda, right after the pledge, I have written in the election of chair and vice chair.
Yes. And just in case with people at home that may not have heard, our chairman, Mr. Bowman, has decided to resign, and I am running this meeting tonight only because I'm the vice chair, and there's nothing that has been decided as to what the what this board's going to do without this board having a conversation and making an agreement as to who will be the chair moving forward, and then also selecting a vice chair should the board choose to have me be the interim chairman through the end of through the end of this year here. But, yes, I think we do need to take care of that, at the beginning of Thursday night's meeting.
So that's the agenda now. When Chairman Bowen became chairman, he asked that we move the employee recognitions from monthly to every 6 months, so catching anybody from January to June. So that would be the employee recognitions. Everything else, I think, is pretty self-explanatory in terms of the topics.
Yes. Are y'all
I
okay
did
with?
mention to Mr. Custom early, when I first arrived this evening, I do like this format of having presentations presented in a work session, because if you add these to an already full agenda, it just runs with board meetings.
Yeah, no, I
That's
would,
the point of-
just so y'all know, regardless of where y'all decide to set me at, I do not intend to change that at all. I think it's
I
been
think it
working
works
good.
pretty well to have these presentations in a
Yeah.
separate meeting rather than add to the board agenda.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I concur with that wholeheartedly. Yeah, that would not be something that I would be interested in changing unless it was something the board wanted to do.
Library board appointment. Is that what district is?
It's the current chair. I believe
Chair, huh?
it's 5.
What's your phone?
I believe, I have to check. And they want to be reappointed.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. It's like, what do you, it's like, who that, where they at? All right.
Okay, that's good.
I can make that a reappointment if you like, but I didn't want
No,
to jump the gun.
no, I just, who district it was.
I believe it's 5, but they would
Okay.
like to be reappointed.
Okay,
And they've great, according to Ms. Z, they've done a very good job.
good.
Let me ask you.
I have not gotten back with Mr. McRoberts as to which of the closed session items he would suggest retaining or dropping.
Okay. Just forward, y'all know that there was something that we had been working on in closed session anyway, that I think we need to kind of bring to a close. And that was the evaluation of the county administrator.
So that would be A1. You want to keep A1?
Yes.
I don't know if A8 is necessary, but I would like to hear back from Mr. McRoberts
Okay.
before I say for sure.
Yeah, let us know if we don't need it, we can scratch it or when we approve the agenda.
So what was gonna be the nature of the discussion tonight about the vacancy?
You wanna,
I've sent you all an email that kind of laid out some options, and of course, you also got information from Mr. McRoberts. So I think the decision is y'all's, obviously, but the process decision is y'all's as well. Is, do you want to, are you of like mind? Do you have someone and you would like to go ahead and plan on appointing in the very near future? If that's the case, you could call a special meeting for as early as Tuesday. If you decide that's what you want to do. Ms. Kelly just has to post it by midnight tonight. So if you wanted to do a special meeting to make the appointment, you can do that. The other option is you could reach out to folks and solicit for our audience members.
Thank you, sir.
Now, we've done it both ways.
Yeah, we have.
Yes, I've looked at the history. You have done it both ways.
Yeah, we've done it both ways.
It's entirely up to y'all. If you want to go this route, this ad could be put to the paper tomorrow. And after they come in, set a special meeting date to review the letters of interest and qualifications, and then make an appointment. I mean,
I'd like to say this one. I'd like to see us let the citizens come apply. And then the whole board, we got a chance to interview them. That's what we did with No. And because we had Ben and some others who wanted to do it. And then on the other hand, we went to Jack Green, who was sick at that time. And then Jack said if we wanted to. And then in Clarence's thing, Clarence said, both these guys had died on it, including Ray. You can do it either way.
But guys, I think we know that we've had, 4 names, one withdrew, their name individually, but 3 has been mentioned to all of us, and it appeared to me that there seemed to be a consensus for one. And I haven't heard anything additional. Did you miss something? Did you hear additional? Ms. Shepherd, have you heard any additional? What's going on? Outside the ones we have? Well,
You know, they were, the people were waiting for the process of the procedure that we were going to use.
I don't know. I don't know. I think that we got a lot of moving parts here. And it'd be good to have that representation maybe sooner than later, maybe even temper down some of the unfortunate allegations that's out there, as well. And that's been very unfortunate, but, there were some good names that was mentioned, but like I said, if we feel like, I mean, do we want to drag this out for 45 days? That's all I'm asking.
Well, it wouldn't be 45 days, but it would give people the opportunity to put that name in if they choose to. Because we've heard of these people, but it may be more out there. I don't know. Man,
I don't have any. Unlike you, I felt like there was a consensus toward one candidate, the interested party. I don't have an objection to the process. I would hate to see us allow it to drag on for a period of
want it to
time.
be 45 days now.
So what type of a time limit would y'all like to put it out, have the things back and have a date to make a decision?
I think once the ad goes out, 2 days from the date of the ad.
No more than.
Yeah, cause I was just thinking about
Unless
long
there are
term,
requirements that I don't know about.
No.
as long as they can qualify for the ballot. Well, no,
They
as
won't be
long as
able
they're
to-
a qualified voter.
The qualified voter.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. As long as they can legally
I
vote.
mean, if it's someone that's interested in it, I would assume what they do is they go and get their packet and try to qualify by the 20th. If they're really interested in the position
But if it's someone who just wants to be the interim, I think
through December
Yeah.
31st, yeah.
then they just need to, I guess, prove that they can legally vote.
Right.
Okay.
if y'all would like, I mean, we can move this due date up. I just picked a Friday at noon.
Yeah, I
And
think
we
that's
can
too long.
We can move that up.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
just so everybody knows, the 19th is a holiday. We can make it the 20th, or we could make it the Friday before, which means it's a pretty quick turnaround between the ad.
And what is the Friday before?
Friday before would be Friday, June the 16th. So
I'm
Friday
okay,
day.
I'm okay with that.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
June 16th.
That's not, I'm just saying, no.
Your ad would go into the paper on the 14th, so that.
That's what I'm saying, it was only two, like,
Oh,
it'll only be
only
like
give
the
you 2
2 days.
days.
It'll only give you 2 days.
Oh.
Oh,
Between the ad. Now, keep in mind, we would also be posting this on the website, on Facebook. So,
What are our requirements? I mean, I know that the paper would be
You're not required to do
What to do?
You're not required. to do
Because
that.
we can also, I know the newspapers will also let you pay to do an advertisement, and they'll run it on Facebook themselves, and it'll get out much quicker than the paper would. And the 16th will come into play at that point.
So the two papers, our website, our Facebook, and the papers.
So I think even if there's a consensus among us about the candidate for this interim period, we
We've done
still
both ways.
need to go through this process.
We've done it both ways.
We've done you that way, but we didn't do your husband that way. We did Helen that way. But when Ray died, we've had several people
Well,
die.
I put in a lot of interest, and so it's,
Sure you did.
Mr. Abbott
Mhm.
at the same time,
That's right.
but I was the one that was chosen. So I did put in a lot.
I mean, I think, I see that we clearly agree that we don't want to drag it out.
No, we don't wanna drag it out, and if through the 16th, like say we only have 2 days.
Do we even need to put it in the paper instead of just going directly to Billy and asking him to do the ad on Facebook then and do it on our
I don't
website?
think we don't. Because it's up to the.
Again, there's no requirement. that
Yeah,
you
that's
do
what I'm
this.
saying, like,
It's up to this board as to the way they want to do.
If you want to do more of a social media hit, we can do it that way.
And then I'll bring the 16th back into play, okay? Would y'all be all right with the 16th? Because I will say that my preference right now is to go with the consensus and bring them in here and have them ready for Thursday's meeting. I mean, that's,
Either way you do it, it's gonna be a consensus.
well, and I understand. I'm saying, like, right now, I just, I think this board, well, I mean, I see what you're saying, and I get it, I just,
So if you,
the sooner the better, I think.
so now if you got them in on the 16th, and I'm using noon so that we could scan them and get them out to you, deliver,
Mhm.
and then you'd have the weekend. Would you want to have a meeting on the 20th to interview and or make a decision?
I don't even think we need to interview, because we know these people.
No, I don't think we need an interview.
All right, when is the 16th? When is our June meeting?
The
The 15th?
15th,
15. Okay, all right, and if they're gonna be back on the 16th, we could go ahead and advertise a meeting to go in and,
You know,
Review these
people, but
applications.
You don't know their philosophy. There are many things you don't know that you could ask.
well, if you do it on the 16th, what, put it out on the 16th, you said the 20th? I mean, that's that Tuesday, isn't it? It's not on a Tuesday?
It's a Tuesday. The 20th would be a Tuesday. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And then we make a decision. If we can get the material to us for us to read, like if they send a letter of why they want to be on this board.
Mhm.
And we get that letter and we all get to read it before that time. Then we can go from there.
that's right. I mean, that's what I'm saying, I'm just looking for the date past the 16th, how quick we can meet and go ahead and make the
20th
appointment.
would be fine with me.
And y'all wanna do it at 7, does that,
Special meeting,
But the
6:20.
I don't have my calendar. with me. The 20, let me make sure.
Mr. Vaughn, I don't have my book with me, I'm gonna get you to send me an email with the date on it.
I don't have my calendar with me either.
I'm sorry,
The 20th was what, the meeting, is that what we're talking about?
yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
And y'all said 7, does 7 work better for y'all, or
I can
6,
do
6:30?
6:30.
Ms. Shepherd,
I can do 6. I could be here at 6.
6
Yeah,
works,
6
okay, Ms.
o'clock.
Vaughn, good,
Mhm.
20th,
Talking about June the 20th,
Mm-hmm.
what time?
6
6
o'clock.
p.m.
is your preference for this facility or the courthouse?
Y'all wanna just run into the courthouse instead of kicking this up? Well, what do y'all want to do?
Yeah, man.
Are we going into executive session? When we discuss these things?
I believe, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have
We
to.
go into a closed
We'll
session.
have to.
It's an appointment.
Okay, that's just me at the courthouse now.
It's 6 o'clock.
Well, now, was 6 or 6:30?
6 o'clock. I can be there at 6.
Okay.
You can't get that before six.
Mr. Vaughn, I work.
You know, we have a lady in church, and she said, you know, they were talking about plucking things out, plucking sin out and stuff like that.
Hey,
And I told her,
board members, did
after the church.
any of y'all got any comments or anything to add?
Look out in the house.
Ms. Simmons, you got anything?
No.
Mr. Vaughn, you got anything? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, stand up. Go on.
All right.
Always told Steve.
I'm gonna tell you what, this one right here is